Welcome back to the Haunting Hour, the home where shadows whisper and the unseen lurks in every corner. If this video sends a shiver down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more chilling tales, and ring the bell to never miss an eerie episode. I'm eager to hear from you, so after the video, comment below to tell me which story you like the most and what haunting tales you'd like to hear next. Now, gather your courage because it's time to dive into the first story. Let's see if you can handle the haunting. It was just another lazy Friday night, and my parents had gone out for the weekend, leaving me home alone. I was excited about the prospect of having the whole house to myself. After microwaving some popcorn, I settled into the cozy living room, the glow of the TV my only companion. That's when I remembered the old camcorder my dad kept in the attic, a dusty relic from the early 2000s. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to see what forgotten memories it held. Climbing the creaky steps to the attic, I brushed past cobwebs and boxes labeled with years gone by. Finally, I found the camcorder tucked in an old moth-eaten bag. I flipped it open, half expecting it not to work, but to my surprise, it powered on, displaying the last recorded video. The timestamp read from a decade ago. The video started innocuously enough, showing a younger version of myself playing in the backyard. But as the footage continued, it captured a figure lurking at the edge of the woods, something I never noticed as a child. The figure was distant and blurry, but undeniably there, watching. A chill ran down my spine, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. As the video played on, the figure began to move closer to the house with each scene, until finally, it was at the back door. Then, abruptly, the footage cut to static. My heart pounded in my chest. I ejected the tape, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. But I needed answers. I decided to search the attic for any more tapes related to that day. While searching, I stumbled upon a series of journals that belonged to my great-grandfather, hidden beneath a loose floorboard. As I flipped through the dusty pages filled with frantic scribbles, one entry caught my eye, dated the same day as the video. It read, "Must ensure the house is locked. He wanders closer every night. I fear what happens if he gets in." A sudden noise from downstairs snapped me out of my reading. The house was supposed to be empty. My heart skipped a beat as I listened. There it was again, a faint tapping coming from the living room. I left the journals and the camcorder and crept towards the attic door, peering down into the shadowy hall below. The tapping continued, rhythmic and persistent. I knew I had to find out what was causing it, yet every instinct screamed for me to run. But where would I go? This was my home, and I needed to face whatever was down there. My hands trembled as I slowly descended the attic stairs, the old wood groaning under each step. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, as if urging me to hurry. By the time I reached the bottom, my whole body was on edge, every shadow seeming to twist and move in the dim light. I made my way to the living room, where the sound was strongest. It was coming from near the TV, right where I'd left the camcorder. I paused at the doorway, taking a deep breath before stepping forward to investigate. The room was cold, much colder than it should have been, and I could see my breath fogging in the air. As I approached, the tapping stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was suffocating. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on the camcorder, now inexplicably back on the coffee table. I was sure I had left it upstairs. Hesitantly, I picked it up, and the screen flickered to life by itself, showing the static-filled screen of the last video. Then, without warning, the static cleared, and a new video began to play. It showed the living room, from the exact angle I was standing. My blood ran cold as I watched myself on the screen, looking around in confusion. But there was something else there with me in the video. A shadowy figure standing just behind where I was, silent and still. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Panicking, I ran to the front door, flinging it open, only to freeze on the threshold. There, in the glow of the porch light, was a trail of muddy footprints leading inside. They were fresh, wet, and they stopped abruptly at the living room. I hadn't seen anyone enter, and all the doors had been locked. I closed the door, my mind racing. The house suddenly felt foreign, as if I were a stranger in my own home. With nowhere to go, I decided to confront whatever this was. Gathering every ounce of courage, I spoke into the emptiness. "Who are you? What do you want?" The house remained silent for a moment before the camcorder flickered again. This time, text appeared on the screen, scrawled as if hurriedly written. "You watched. Now you know. Keep watching." The implication was clear and terrifying. Whatever this presence was, it had been here long before tonight, watching, waiting. And now it wanted me to understand something buried in these tapes, something my great-grandfather had known and feared. Determined to uncover the truth and end this nightmare, I went back to the attic. I needed to watch the rest of the tapes, to delve deeper into the journals. Whatever secrets they held, I was going to find them, no matter how dark or deep I had to go. The night was long, and the house was no longer just a home. It was a mystery that I had to solve, or else risk becoming another shadow lurking in its halls. I had always thought being home alone was a thrill, a break from my usual routine of family dinners and early bedtimes. But the house felt different that night. The shadows seemed to stretch longer across the hallways, and each creak and whisper of the old wooden floors beneath my feet sounded more like a sinister secret being passed from room to room. My parents had gone to visit my grandmother, who lived a few towns over, leaving me in charge for the weekend. The first night alone was uneventful, filled with video games and junk food. It wasn't until the second night that things took a turn. I was lounging in the living room, half watching a movie, when a sudden crackle of static burst from my phone. I glanced down to see an incoming video call from an unknown number. Hesitant, I answered it. "Hello?" My voice wavered slightly. There was no response, only the heavy, ragged breathing on the other end. Then, a whisper, barely audible. "Look outside." The call ended abruptly. Chills ran down my spine. I approached the window slowly, peering into the darkness. Nothing seemed amiss, just the quiet suburban street bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. Laughing off my nerves, I decided it must have been a prank call. I returned to my movie, but the uneasy feeling lingered. It wasn't long before I heard it, a faint tapping sound coming from the back door. This wasn't the innocent patter of rain or the wind's play. It was deliberate, calculated. Tap, tap, tap. Consistent and unnerving. Gathering every ounce of courage, I tiptoed to the door, flinching with each tap. I peeked through the peephole and saw nothing but the swirling black of night. Mustering more bravery than I felt, I opened the door to a rush of cold night air. Nothing. No one was there. As I turned to head back inside, a cold wind whispered through the trees, carrying a soft, mocking laughter that danced through the air. My heart froze. The door slammed shut behind me, and as I spun around, my eyes caught a fleeting shadow darting through the hallway into the darkness of my house. The game was just beginning. Panic gripped me as I stood frozen at the door, the echo of that sinister laughter still bouncing off the walls of my mind. The house suddenly felt like a maze, each corner and shadow a potential hiding spot for whatever had just invited itself in. My rational mind screamed that it was just my imagination, fueled by the scary movies and the isolation of being home alone. But the fear was real, pulsing through me with every heartbeat. I locked the door behind me, my hands trembling. "This is stupid," I muttered to myself, trying to brush off the creeping dread. "It's just a shadow." But as I turned to face the living room, the air felt thicker, charged with a silent warning. Deciding I needed light, lots of it, I moved from room to room, flicking on every switch, banishing the shadows back to their corners. The house brightened, but my comfort didn't return. The tapping had stopped, but it was replaced by something worse. A heavy silence, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I tried to focus on gathering my thoughts. Phone, friends, police. I listed my options. My phone. I had left it by the couch. I hurried back to the living room, my eyes darting around nervously. There it was, right where I had left it, its screen ominously dark. As I reached for it, a sudden movement at the window caught my eye. A shadow flickered across the curtain. I spun around, heart racing, only to see the curtains settle back into place, as if disturbed by a draft. I grabbed my phone and dialed my best friend, Max, who picked up after a couple of rings. "Dude, I think someone's in my house," I whispered, voice quivering. "Okay, calm down. I'm coming over right now. Just stay on the line." Max's voice was steady, a lifeline in the chaos. As I clutched the phone, waiting for Max, a soft creak sounded upstairs. My room. The sound was unmistakable. Someone was moving around up there. Every instinct told me to run, to get out of the house, but I was frozen, trapped in my fear. Then a new sound pierced the silence. My own voice, echoing from upstairs, repeating what I had just said on the phone. "I think someone's in my house." It was my voice, but distorted, mocking. A laugh followed, low and chilling, drifting down the staircase. This was no longer a game of mere shadows and fears. Something was in the house with me, playing a twisted game of mimicry and terror. The front door suddenly burst open. It was Max, bat in hand, ready to confront whatever nightmare awaited. Together we searched the house, bracing ourselves at each turn. But there was nothing. No one. The house was empty, as if the shadow had been nothing more than a figment of my imagination. But we both knew it wasn't. The night had been too real, the fear too tangible. As we sat in the living room waiting for dawn, we could only wonder about what had transpired. Had it been a warning? A visitation? We didn't know. All I knew was that being home alone would never feel the same again. And somewhere, in the dark, the shadow was still laughing. It was supposed to be just another weekend alone at home. My parents were out of town, attending a conference, and I had the house all to myself. Being 16, I relished the freedom, the quiet nights, and the liberty to eat ice cream straight from the tub. But that particular Friday night was different. The evening crept in with an uneasy silence. The kind that makes you aware of every little creak and moan of an old house. I was in the living room, curled up with a horror novel, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread with each turn of the page. The wind howled outside, making the trees scratch against the windows like fingernails. I convinced myself it was just the storm picking up. Around midnight, the power flickered and went out, plunging the house into darkness. My heart skipped a beat, and a cold sweat dampened my back. I fumbled for my phone, its light a small comfort, when I heard it, a soft metallic whisper from the front door, the sound of the lock being tampered with. Panic surged through me as I realized someone was trying to break in. With shaking hands, I dialed 911, whispering my address to the operator. The dispatcher's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the chaos unfurling in my mind. "Stay quiet and keep yourself hidden. Help is on the way." I crept upstairs to my parents' bedroom, the only room with a lock inside. As I hid under the bed, the front door creaked open. Footsteps echoed through the house, slow and deliberate. My breath hitched as they grew closer, each step a thunderous beat against the old wooden floors. The bedroom door opened. Through the slats of the bed frame, I could see 2 feet standing just inches away. My entire body was rigid, praying they wouldn't hear the frantic drumming of my heart. Come out, wherever you are," a voice cooed, sing-song and menacing. The intruder started to search the room. I clutched my phone, the operator's reassurances a distant murmur as the footsteps moved away, toward the closet. That's when I realized the window was my escape. I slid out, heart pounding, and dropped to the ground outside, just as the police lights flashed at the front of the house. Relief washed over me in an icy wave. But as I turned back, looking up at the window from which I'd just escaped, I saw him. An old, weathered face, eyes hollow with madness, smiling down at me. My breath caught in my throat as I stared up at the twisted smile of the man in the window. His gaze held mine, a silent challenge, as if daring me to run. The flashing lights of the police cruisers painted his face in bursts of red and blue, deepening the shadows that clung to his hollow cheeks. In that moment, suspended between terror and relief, I felt a chilling realization. This stranger knew I was alone. The police officers approached with their flashlights cutting through the darkness, calling out to reassure me. I pointed towards the house, my voice a broken whisper. "He's upstairs, in the window." Their lights snapped upwards, but the face was gone, leaving only the empty night staring back. As the officers entered the house, I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off the cold that seeped into my bones. The night air was sharp, each breath a stinging reminder of the nightmare unfolding. A stern woman with a gentle voice stayed by my side, asking questions that I struggled to answer. My thoughts were scrambled, every noise making me jump. Inside, the police moved methodically, their radios crackling with updates. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged with a man in handcuffs. He was older, his hair a wild tangle of gray, his clothes ragged. His eyes, when they met mine, were a piercing blue, unnaturally bright against his weathered skin. He smirked as they let him past, a silent message that he enjoyed the fear he'd instilled. The officer beside me noticed my distress. "We'll make sure he doesn't bother you again," she assured, her voice firm. They found evidence of his intentions, tools for breaking in, and worse, photographs of the house taken over several days. It wasn't just a break-in, it was an obsession. The following days were a blur of locks changing, security systems installing, and neighbors whispering. My parents cut their trip short, their worry tangible as they enveloped me in tight hugs. The house felt different now, tainted by the knowledge of what had happened, every shadow a reminder of that night. As I tried to move on, a question haunted me. Why our house? The answer came 2 weeks later, when the police informed us that the man had once lived in our home, decades ago. A series of bad choices and a life gone wrong, he had returned, driven by a twisted nostalgia and something darker, resentment. The ordeal changed me. I was more cautious, always aware of my surroundings. But I also grew stronger, more resilient. I knew I could face fear and survive. Yet every night before I closed my eyes, I would glance at the window where I had seen the haunting face, a reminder of the night I was truly alone, but came out alive. Thank you for joining me tonight on The Haunting Hour. If these stories sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps me bring more chilling tales straight to your screen. If you're not yet part of our ghostly gathering, click subscribe and ring the bell to not miss out on any of our haunted adventures. And I'm curious, which story tonight creeped you out the most? Drop a comment below to let us know. Your favorite stories fuel our dark fires and inspire more spooky tales. Also, what kind of scary stories do you want to hear next? Tell me in the comments. Your wish might just become our next nightmare. Until next time, keep the lights on and keep the spirits at bay. Good night, and remember, never venture alone into the dark.